Hey everybody, welcome to Critters. That was our theme song.
Crit.
Terrible.
Okay.
Hey everybody,
Hello.
how are you? This is the live critique stream, and I'm gonna take some images I got in the Crimson Critters email, and I'm gonna do some paint overs for you guys, and then I'll take one or two from the chat depending on how much time we have. So we got a couple images. Well, we got a bunch of images, but I picked a few of the first ones. So let me pull those up. So the first one I want to do is this one. It's Garruk. I think it's Garruk. He's one of the planeswalker guys, or Garruk.
Garruk.
We don't know. Anyways, he's one of the planeswalkers from Magic the Gathering. So, yeah. This person submitted. Who was it? I'll get your name. Alexis Clavera. So thanks for submitting. I want to pull up an image of the actual character just to make sure that we are critiquing this correctly. So there's the character. Here's the concept up here on the screen. I'll be pulling that into Photoshop. Alright.
Well, he's Garruk Wild Speaker,
Is that his name?
and he costs 2 tree mana. He's a planeswalker.
Both of these help.
One thing to keep in mind when you're painting it is that his first ability is to untap 2 target lands, +1. His -1 is to put a 3/3 green beast creature token into play, and he can also have creatures that you control get a +3/+3 and gain trample until the end of turn.
You guys hear
So you want to keep that. In mind when rendering it.
that? Awful. But anyways, I'm looking at this, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, like, what is he doing? Like, I know in Magic, the prime objective is to make everybody go, so badass. But nothing's really going on. He's kind of just, like, in the woods, screaming at the trees. Like, nobody knows what's happening in this image. That's the first thing you gotta think about is, when you're making an image and it's an obvious illustration for, Magic, generally, it's usually like an intense image, like in this one, in Alexi's image of Garruk, he's he's just hanging out, like it's just a character concept. He's not screaming at anything. He's just kind of angry, whatever, hanging out in an environment. That's fine, but the thing with that is that he specifically did that for them, to do a concept for the character. When you do it, and you're doing something just for yourself to, do an illustration, and you want to show it to somebody like Wizards of the Coast, or you want to put it in your portfolio, as an illustration, you should think more about what's happening. Like, you're not working for them based on the limitation that you're doing a character concept. So, a character concept, since it's designed just to show the character, isn't that interesting. People just need to see it in order to know what that character is. So when you do it, in order to grab people's attention, you should focus on something else, like, doing a good illustration of what the character's, about, or if he's fighting anybody, or something. Something has to be happening. So that's my first thing, is just to think more about what you're doing when you're doing it, and why you're doing it.
It's a problem I see a lot on my crits on my stream. Is just that people do an illustration and they don't feel like it's dynamic enough, and they don't feel like it has any kind of real like intensity to it. So they'll do these things that I like to call forced narratives, where they'll change one thing in the piece that doesn't really work with everything else in the piece to try and force it to look more dynamic. And in this case, you made him screaming and you half shut his eyes. So instantly, he doesn't just look angry. He looks like he's freaking out. He's screaming. And the thing about that is that it's just like Dave said. The scream isn't reinforced by anything in the competition. He's not really running. He's just kind of walking, holding an axe. He's not really charging at anything. There's no real intensity. There's nothing in the foreground he's going to fight. He's just in the middle of nowhere, and you thought it was boring, so you made him screaming. And, it just looks like he has some kind of mental disease. Not like he's going to fight something.
Yeah, because that's the problem, is that when it's not for something, when you're just doing it on your own, it instantly reads as something completely different, because I know it's not a character concept because you don't work for magic. So It's like instantly you should bring some narrative into it that isn't just him yelling, because otherwise it's a dude wandering through the woods yelling. And it's like, that's just kind of like silly. So I'm going to change it now. I just cropped him back a bit in the composition so that, I could play with some space and take his pose and what he's doing and actually turn it into something that's an interesting or more interesting narrative. So on top of that, though, before I go crazy and start to design everything, we're going to talk about his anatomy. And this is a character that's easy to do. It's easy to try and bullshit if you don't know anatomy. It doesn't mean it's good. It just means that you can hide all your flaws in this guy. He's perfect for that. And it's just that I know that you don't know how to do it just because of this mouth. So I mean, like, if I go in here and I go into the face here, it's like the mouth is like this. It's like the LOL mouth or something.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't, do that in the image. You got to think about it like, okay, well, how does the mouth work? Like, look in the mirror and scream yourself. Like, how does the mouth shape actually work?
It's like when you're doing a character like this, who's like a big IP owned by a big company. It's like if you make, I'm trying to say this, it's been done by so many good people that, like, if you don't have some kind of edge that's going to make yours stand above the rest, it instantly falls into the realm of, like, subpar fan art. So it's like, my big thing that I want to stress is, like, if you can find some kind of edge, something fresh you can bring to the character, then it's worth having that. It's worth showing that. But if it's just like a less well rendered version of Alexi's or Brad's or someone else's concept of the character, it might not be serving you that well. There might be better things you can do.
Yeah. In general, I mean, if you want to get into something like magic, and I don't know, I mean, I'm sure that's just like your goal in the end is to eventually do something like this for a job. Like, you want to do other stuff. Like, you want to make sure that if you're focused on this stuff, that you're actually doing like illustrations that aren't necessarily the world itself, but could work within it. That's going to catch people's attention a lot more than strictly like drawing the literal character. Like, they don't care exactly how you handle it. They care that you can come up with an idea and that you can execute on vague concepts that they'll give you.
Oh, before we even go any further, I mean, Dave will keep painting, but whose is this? Are you in the chat? I don't think we asked. We got this in the submission email, but are you here?
Yeah, I had the submission email open for anybody who couldn't make it, but if you're here, let us know.
Yeah.
Because we can get some direct feedback from you. But, so, in my image that I'm doing on your thing, it's like, he's not doing anything, and that's one of the problems, is if I'm going to make a narrative in this image and add a couple people or something for him to fight, a couple monsters, it's like, he's not doing anything, he's just walking. So if you're going to do something like that, like, change it so that it's either post action or it just, you know, like right before. Like you gotta get the sweet spot with the swing of his axe if you're gonna do something like that, or just an action pose in general. You know, like right before. You know, like right before he goes and swings, or right after with like a blood spray or something.
Yeah, it's that Frazetta moment that we always talk about. You have to find the frame right before the action happens or immediately after. Those are the moments of highest intensity.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go in right now and start to adjust his pose. This is just something you could do. You know, obviously we're changing a lot in your image, but we're trying to, you know, show you that you can still use this, but you need to take it in a different direction. Like, you need to do something with the character. So if you're gonna do fan art, you know, you don't see a lot of him fighting stuff. You know, that automatically gives you some sort of edge, you know? Like, you automatically have something over other people if you can, like, show him living in the world that he lives in Magic.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, right now there's not a whole lot of images of him doing anything else.
No.
Besides just hanging out. Like, I looked at Google, I saw the character concepts and stuff. Most of the images of him are him, like, yelling or on top of something or whatever. But hardly any of them are of something cool happening with the character. So you could, like, illustrate that part of it. Oh yeah, if you don't know and you're new to this live stream, this is the critique live stream.
Yeah.
Every Sunday we do these. So I'm just gonna have him sort of like jumping off a tree thing here. Having his back foot kind of stepping off a branch. Keeping his head in the sweet spot. You know, the rule of thirds here, or if you take the crop and you bring it in, oops, hold on, take the crop and you bring it in, his head, main action points focus around the intersecting lines.
Yeah. See, there was one awkwardness you had in the image you sent. It's not there anymore. Dave's changing it, but I want you to understand one thing that's a subconscious read of the piece automatically. Is that when you have a powerfully built guy, you know, built on that kind of heroic anatomy, and he's, you know, standing there in kind of a triangular position, and he's holding an axe, and he's got a helmet, and he's looking evil. It's like instantly, you know, anyone who knows anything about, you know, this industry and where it came from. Obviously, that character is Frank Frazetta's Death Dealer. It just is. It's got the helmet, it's got the axe, it's got the stuff hanging around the waist, like it's got the little cape thing. Like, it's like a recomp version of that same kind of, like, you know, old school fantasy badass with an axe. And you kind of had him striding forward like he was kind of jogging with an axe, and it was weird because those powerful poses where the muscles are all totally ripped and they're holding the axe and they're getting ready for battle. If you look back at the people who started that kind of image making and the kind of compositions they do and the kind of bodies they draw in those compositions, the figure is usually not moving. It's usually got its legs planted on the ground in some kind of powerful flexing position. Like they're getting ready, they're going to get jumped by something, they're getting ready to swing the axe. Something like that. It conveys power. It conveys, like, you know, they're not really exerting themselves because they're getting ready for something that's coming. And when you just have them kind of, like, you know, just lazily striding, holding an axe, it takes away that dynamic kind of, like, you know, right before the moment. Like, it gets rid of that. Like, if you look at the old, you know, I said, like, Frazetta, you'll never see a painting he's done where the character is striding, holding a weapon. It never happened. They're planted very firmly in a very powerful pose, holding it. And you have to keep that in mind. There's a reason they did that.
Yeah, so now I'm just, you know, I know I've done a lot to your image, but that's sort of the point, is that it's the same character, but now he's doing something in his environment. And that's what I want to stress, is that, you know, like, he's a character that hasn't really been done in that sort of way, where he's, you know, intense, attacking somebody. You know, you can have, like, what I'm going to do now, like what I'm doing with the lighting, is I'm bringing in light breaking through the trees, which is something that happens in the woods, and it's a great tool that you can use to move the eye around and to set focal points, because you can leave stuff in shadow and it doesn't necessarily, you know, like, have to, you know, work within, you know, like the realm of somebody, dude, like in the middle of the, you know, field or something. Like, you can, like, you could make everything else in shadow and just light his head, you know, like, and it would make sense because of the leaves breaking at a certain point. So what I've done with this character is I've taken him and I'm just sort of emphasizing an emotion, and you can do this in your images, you know, this doesn't only apply to his critique. Like, I'm taking him and I'm moving him this way, but I'm also taking this, and what I'm going to do is lay some characters in here. But with these sweeping motions, I give you the action of the swing with the tree before he even does it. That's what I'm trying to do. Stuff like that helps you a lot to emphasize where he's going. So I'm taking your eye and I'm going like this, and I'm leading you down to the people, and then I'm looping back up, and then this goes around and then comes down again. So things like that in the composition, you know, help lead you around to the action and emphasize the action.
Like I'm seeing in the chat, like Needs a Limit says, like, so you can work with what you have, but make sure you change everything. Well, you got to keep in mind there's two kinds of crits, okay? There's crits that are paint overs that tell you how to emphasize something you already have, and there's crits that tell you what mistakes you made this time and how to remedy them next time. This is the second kind. This is where his image was really polished and really close to done, but it had fundamental flaws in the planning process. So he can either start over with this and do something more like this and improve the illustration, or he can watch this crit and keep in mind that this is how he should approach the next piece if he was to do it, because essentially this does change everything, but it makes a better illustration. That's what we're critiquing.
Yeah, I'm trying to show him that you can take the character, bring him into a place that's actually, you know, like something people want to see. Like, you know, Gone is just him sitting in the woods doing nothing. And now he's in the midst of, like, a fight. And that's the whole thing, is like, yeah, I can critique a character concept, but you don't work for Magic. So you're not restricted to doing that boring job. It's one of the things where people who get into, you know, concept art and stuff, and all they do is the stuff that's expected. All they do is orcs and, like, guys in armor and stuff. And that's cool and all, and you can get those jobs, and it's fine to be excited to do that. But you can work with so much more in the image. You know, like, you can do more with your characters. You don't have to be restricted to this stuff. So, I mean, like, I'll go back to just to what it was, and, like, with this guy here sitting in the middle of the woods, you know, the critique is that it's not an exciting illustration. There's nothing happening.
Yeah.
So, to help him, you know, like, just show that this is something, this is a place that you should have gone with a character like him, is that he's, you know, he's huge and powerful and he looks dangerous, so show that. Alright, and the other thing, and this goes back to the original illustration, this is all very monotone. And you can't really do that with the illustration because you don't have any focal points. Like, you have all these areas around the drawing that are just, you know, like, here, I'll point them out to you. So you have, like, this high point of contrast here, high point of contrast here, here. I mean, like, you have these areas, and it's like, you know, there's no, like, strict lighting. Like, it should just be the head. And like I said, play with leaves breaking through. Like, you have light coming in. Like, I see these beams, but you're not using that. You're not dropping the rest of it in shadow. So I'm just gonna quickly do that. Like, an easy way is to just adjust the colors and stuff. So I'm gonna take the color layer here, and I'm gonna start to bring in some other tones. And this is something that you gotta do, because this right now it's just green. I'm using the palette that he created. I haven't introduced anything else. So it's all monotone, and that's kind of boring. So bring some colors to the image, you know, like bring some warm tones. If it's gonna be green, make him pop as a warm tone, you know, like red versus green, whatever, and then bring some blue behind that to push the cool while keeping everything still green. So you have multiple contrasts.
Yeah, that already pops it. I'm addressing non-crit questions in your chat, Dave, so
It's cool.
Just keep painting.
I'm not gonna keep it totally orange. I'm just trying to show you that you gotta put it somewhere. Like you gotta change the colors and the palette at some point, because it's just not a lot going on with the colors.
That's the other thing, is like he's supposed to be the forest guy, so it's like the color, even on like a subconscious level in this illustration, is like he's supposed to be like a lush, warm, alive kind of place.
Yeah, I mean, like the contrast is that he's some big, hulking, ridiculous dude.
So there's a lot of questions about lighting in the chat. In general, how does he decide his lighting? What Dave's doing is he's amplifying the lighting in certain directions to help the illustration. He's choosing how he's going to lay out the light sources to better pop the character, which is what you should always do in an illustration, because you know you're creating it. You get to choose where the light comes from to emphasize the character the most. You know, so by having that decision. I mean, like, the reason he's good at doing it is because he's studied light and he's done, you know, still lives and things by setting up lights. You just have to do that for a long time to get good at it. But to answer your question, he's deciding his lighting in such a way to launch the character forward.
Yeah, I mean, you have control over the image. That's the whole point of like an illustration, is you're not restricted to doing any one thing. So I mean, like, you know, to give yourself limitations is ridiculous. Like, you can control it. It doesn't have to make sense. You know, like, it has to work, you know, how lighting works, but not how the world works. Like, you can change it, you know, like, you can use artificial lights. Like, people do that all the time, you know, like 3 different light sources to pop a character forward. It doesn't necessarily make sense, but, you know, that's not the point. The point is to make something striking that's going to draw you in and be exciting, you know, as an image. So like here, like the way I set up my lighting is, you know, he's the focal point. So this guy's the focal point. He's the highest contrast. It's breaking through the trees here. If I were to finish this illustration, I'd have it here. I'd have his cast shadow on this tree right there, you know, with some cool little bits, but that would create some depth. And then I would break some back here in the distance, that there was some lighting coming through to pop him forward, you know, like a burst of light. And I would also use that as a sort of rim lighting device on him, and have little bits of light hitting these guys in the foreground of that sort of, you know, glow that comes through the leaves in the middle of the woods. So yeah, I'm not going to do a ton more on this. Obviously you can see I ended up having to change a bunch of stuff. But like I've been saying over and over, you know, do not limit yourself. You have this character, you've seen where he comes from, you've seen what other people have done, what this is right now, and I don't mean to offend anybody or offend you or whatever, but it's just a worse version of this one.
Yeah.
and you're setting yourself up to fail because of that. And if you wanted to do the fan art thing, there's no reason why you can't draw this character, but why do exactly what he did? I mean, I know that you submitted it for a critique, so I'm assuming you want to know this stuff. So,
just to let you guys know, I saw answering a question in the chat. What you said isn't true. Dave's not flipping the image to satisfy a brush he's using and look at curves. He's flipping the image to satisfy the left-right versus the right-left read, because when you draw an image and you don't flip it, you never see the mirror of it. And when you look at a mirror of an image, all the flaws jump out. A classic thing we look at in crits is that people will draw something without ever flipping it. When you flip it, everything's skewed, usually to the direction of whatever hand you're using. If you're left-handed, it's skewed to the right. If you're right-handed, it's skewed to the left. And by flipping it, it's something the old masters did, where they look at their paintings in a mirror to find the flaws, because you think what you're doing is accurate, but it's actually not true. So all he's doing when he's flipping it is looking for that mirror read, because an image should work in either direction. If it doesn't, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, in no way am I using it to satisfy a brush.
Yeah.
But, alright, so I've taken his main thing of just the character, I've introduced the character to an environment and a new action and some story elements. You can push that even further if you want, but this is the direction I would suggest you take with the character, considering it hasn't been done yet. And that'll help you, quite a bit in making something that people want to see, something that's exciting,
And also something that Magic hasn't really seen, because you're obviously trying to go for that job. And they've already done a ton of the stoic character standing there doing nothing. They've had a ton of people redo it. Why do the same thing? Find something else you can do with that character. Make it an active illustration. Bring it to a level they haven't brought it to, because that's how you're going to get the edge competitively.
Alright, so I'm going to close this and move on to the next one. This one is from Victoria Yarova.
Let's see. Do we critique only illustration in Critters or character designs as well? We prefer to do illustrations in this one, because there's more information in an illustration. A character design automatically shoots itself in the foot because it has to be flat. It has to be a turnaround. We can't really crit backgrounds. There's less data in it, so we can't tell you what your flaws are, because for all we know, you might be the worst person in the world at painting environments, but we can't help you with that because it's not in a character design. Now, I will say, on my stream daily in the Danger Room, I do crits every day, and I'm more than happy to crit character designs there. These are long-form critiques, so we want illustrations. But if it's just a design thing, I'm more than happy.
Hey, Dan.
What's up?
Hold on a second, you were turning into a robot.
Skype.
Yeah, it's just
Skype.
Sorry, guys. It wasn't bad, I was just wanting to see if it would automatically fix itself.
Where do you apply for the daily crits? You don't apply. You just come to the Danger Room while I'm working, and when I say it's crit time, you post your link in the chat. There's no email for it. You just have to be there because I do it daily.
Yeah, well, so here's the next image, and I'm going to read to you guys. She's in the chat, but I'm going to read to you what she said about what this is supposed to be. So the feel that she wanted but didn't quite match was some eerie, sort of creepy vibe, and she said she doesn't think it came out like that in the end. She wanted the Earth Demon to feel approachable but dangerous at the same time, but the final thing really doesn't look like it. Well, yeah, it can definitely help you with that. Easy things you can do to make an unsettling character are, lose certain features.
Yeah.
You can black out eyes. It's a creepy thing they do all the time, so it's kind of like, a creepy character, but also human in a way, but not quite human. Lose the smile. Stuff like that. That's the easy way to make things, it's like almost human, but not human.
Yeah.
Little skewed things. I mean, like, there's extreme things you can do, like losing mouths and changing the nose slightly to make it more alien, but also human.
Like one big thing I'm seeing with the piece overall, and I'm sure Dave will get to it in just a second, is just something I talk about a lot on mine that I see all the time, is that there's an element of the illustration that people are obviously uncomfortable with. So what they do is towards the end, they're looking at it and they go, "Oh man, that's not working." And then they may not do it intentionally, but what happens is they add a new element to the piece to distract the eye from something they're not liking. And what that does is it automatically jumps out as something that doesn't belong in the piece because it doesn't fit with everything else. So right now you've got very organic blurred out mountains in the background, very organic naked woman with very organic, branches coming out of her head. And all that stuff kind of works together. It's all naturey and stuff. And then you add this big Persian archway behind her that isn't attached to anything because there's no houses anywhere and nothing else in the piece is carved. And it doesn't read as something cool in the environment. It reads as, "Oh God, I don't like these mountains. Let's cover some of them up and distract the viewer."
Yeah.
It's just an added element, and it doesn't serve the illustration. It's not a repeated design element. So it just screams as something tacked on to distract people from something you didn't like.
Yeah, because the thing is that, it's the same thing with a lot of the elements of this illustration is, it's like you had one idea, but you didn't go all the way with, you'd have an idea here and there for things, but you wouldn't go all the way with any of them. There's elements in this, I'll just start circling them with red. So let me pull this up. So, let me shut off my layer. Elements in this, like the branches on the head, for instance. This isn't repeated in the body. There's no element of tree or whatever else in the body, so as a character design, it doesn't work. You need to have repeating shapes. Think about it as if it's a creature that exists. If it's part of, a tree, or it has tree bits to it, treat it like that. And, use the roots throughout the body or something. Coming out through the skin, or, wrapping around certain areas, or on the hands and feet and whatever, stuff like that. Maybe use some elements of more forest stuff in the hair. You already have this forest green hair, but if you're going for this earth demon thing, it's really easy to take these, you have these antlers going on, it reads as deer antlers. I mean, I get it, but you should add some more stuff to it because, it shouldn't just be a deer. And I don't mean that it can't just be a deer. I just mean that it's, it's something I've seen before, but you'd need to repeat elements of it. That kind of character. Let me see here. So I'm just moving the roots throughout right now. You see the shape on her forehead? That's a really easy thing you can do to bring into you can bring that into the elbows, knees, easily. And it'll work as a design element pretty well.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Things you already have in it that you could use right now. And the other thing is, you have these bits on the, these little sticks coming off of it, eyebrows.
How do you feel about the 3 eyes and the 2 ears?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I was going to get to right after that. You have unnecessary things, and this isn't a super high resolution image, so
It's one thing we see a lot, and it's a common mistake that everybody does. I mean, I've done it, Dave's done it in the past. Everybody kind of goes through a phase. What happens when you're not totally comfortable with your design skills? Inevitably, you busy things up for the sake of filling space, because this weird thing happens in your brain where you think that the fuller a space is, the better it is, or the more detailed or the more exciting the piece is. And it's not true. You're just busying it up for the sake of busying it up. She would look infinitely better without those eyes there and with one ear, but you weren't comfortable with the face, so you added more stuff to it. That's all it is. And everybody does that to a degree.
So the thing about that, with the character now, is like if you take the change I made before, like I just quickly painted the eyes dark, and I like made it smaller lips or stuff like that, just little creepy things. You know, like the multiple eyes and the ears and stuff, like that's kind of forced. Like make it like organically creepy, so like smaller features,
Yeah.
you know, maybe elongated features, stuff that's like almost human but not human. Like that's creepier than multiple eyes. Like stuff that's close to being us is creepier.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so we've got 230 people in here, and just as an aside for all of you, hopefully you're listening. If you enjoyed this and you want to get into the group and you want to, you know, hang out with everybody here, Wednesday we're having Dan Levisi on, the guy who created Last Man Standing, and you know, he's great, and we're going to be having a long. That's at 5, right? 5 p.m.
Yeah, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be doing a long Q&A with him.
Yeah, long form Q&A. We're going to be taking questions from the chat. We're going to have questions that we've written down for him. So if you know Dan Levisi, or if you don't, you should check him out. Wednesday, 5 p.m. EST. So come on. I'll be fielding the questions from the chat. I'm only going to be able to take the best ones because we're going to have a lot of people here. But
It's going to be in here.
Think of some good ones. It's going to be on this channel.
So right now, I've you know, like she was blending into the background pretty hard, so I've just quickly used the select tool, and I you know, I selected out the background around her, and I'm bumping her forward with some atmosphere. You know, like you want to have her read off the background, because right now she's just kind of there. And I'm going to change a bit about the background as well, but I just want to let you know that, you know, like she was just kind of disappearing, and if she's up that high, there's no reason why you can't do that.
It's like one weirdness I'm seeing overall with the image. I don't know if this was something you thought about when you did it, but just in terms of style choice for her, it's like, I know the title of it was like Earth Demon. So, you know, obviously she's got earth elements in her. She's got the roots that you had coming out of the head. She's got the branch kind of features. You know, she's like kind of like a wood nymph sort of looking classic design. But she's in like the middle of like the desert in Arizona. And it doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. She looks like some kind of forest-based thing. But she's in an environment that doesn't play to that character. She's in the barren wasteland.
Yeah, like you could, there's things you could do with this, like you could add elements of destroyed woods everywhere, and you could have her like withering away and dying.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, just a quick character design thing is that if your character is going to live in a place, it should look like the place, especially if it is some sort of like deity of the place or some sort of element of the place. It needs to look like the place in order to feel like it's a part of the world, in order to feel like it in some way is a part of the creation of this place.
Because if she was like kneeling down right now, like just think about this just really quickly. If she was kneeling down right now on a ledge by a stream in a forest, and there was a bunch of dead tree roots around her in the background with some kind of pale light coming through, like some sort of withering forest in the fall, and you played off like the cool colors of her body with like, you know, warm dead leaves or something, that would be infinitely better than just this huge scaping Mars mountain range. Like, you know, it doesn't feel like she belongs here, you know, like unless you designed her based off like rocks and tumbleweeds, because this is a dead environment and she's something based on living elements.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to do immediately is get rid of that archway right now, because the archway, it really serves no purpose. It detracts from the image quite a bit.
Yeah. Even just getting rid of it real quick right there, it's already a better image. The background still needs to be fixed because she doesn't work in it, but it's already better without it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, like what Dan was saying, where people add stuff to an image and it doesn't serve any real purpose.
Yeah.
Like, it's not repeated. There's no sense of culture in this image. Nothing else is going on.
It just reads as you were uncomfortable with that part of the piece, so you threw something in.
But a thing you can do, and something that I would suggest with this image, is a L composition. So I mean, like, this is something that's done a lot. You could turn this into like a statue or a monument of some kind or whatever. I don't know what you want to do. But a lot of times when they do these images, it's, you know, like this is a sort of set up as a classic L composition where it just goes, you know, down and to the right.
It's like immediately when you're looking at this, again, like I was saying before, what are people going to see? What are clients going to see? Like automatically, I don't know if you're looking at them, but you know, the person who did this kind of imagery and the person who worked with these kind of themes is Brian Froud. And, you know, he designed all these nymphs and fairies and creatures like this and, you know, wood sprites. And, like, he was a real master. He still is, but he's a master of pulling in elements from reality, pulling in studies of animals and plants and stuff to reinforce his designs and make them look like they live in the environments they're in. Like, he'll go to lengths to actually add things on the design where the creature evolved to do specific things in the environment. Like, you know, like he's really, really brilliant with that kind of stuff. So to push this to the level it needs to be at, you might want to look at his work, see how he's borrowing from nature to make the stuff better.
Yeah, like there's things you can do though. I mean, like it's not necessarily gonna make sense in like a, I don't know, like a story way, but I mean, like I'm just trying to think of something that she could be doing. So like I'm taking the mountains in the background, and you gotta let everything in the image serve your illustration. I'm gonna add what I was talking about in a second, but just in terms of the whole image overall, you know, like lead the mountains to her, you know, like make things work for you. Like adjust these things so that it's coming down to her. You know, like you're making people look at her. And, you know, you can add like clouds and stuff in the background, whatever you want to do. Anyways, let me go in and do what I was going to do. So, here's what I'm saying. If she's not from this world, then she's introducing something to this world. Or she's there for some reason. Why is she there? You know, normally, like, think about it. Like, let's just think about it, you know, together as a group. You know, she's there. Why would this forest nymph kind of thing come to this weird, desolate place? Why would it do that?
Honey Appleseed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only two things it can be. This is the environment she used to live in and it's dead, or she's going to a new place to spread the forest. So automatically she's Johnny Appleseed.
Well, the thing about it, like the reason we say that is because, you know, what does a plant do? You know, plants, they're just always laying seeds, like, you know, like leaves falling down to the ground, all that kind of stuff. And you want to think about that.
See, Amarie, I have to disagree. You're saying she might be a captive. You're forcing a narrative. There's nothing in this that suggests that she's a captive. That would be changing the entire illustration to satisfy the fact that nothing's really going on right now. We're trying to play to the image's strengths, not change it from the ground up. That's what we did with the last crit.
Yeah.
In this one, we're looking at the two elements you've juxtaposed, where it's a nature creature versus a barren wasteland, and we're trying to think, okay, well, what real reasons could that thing be there? And the most obvious one is that she's laying seeds.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say that you couldn't do that, but I would need to change everything to do that. Like, I would need to bring in chains. I would need to bring in all these elements of, like, a prison. I would need to bring in other characters and, like, maybe a civilization in the background to show that she's not even a part of that world.
Yeah,
in any way.
She doesn't look afraid. She doesn't look tied up.
And then everything has to be in complete contrast with her, too, in order to make that element work. To feel like it's the bad, you know, element. So I'm going to take her hair, and this is just an idea, you don't have to do it. I'm turning it into like a rooted part of the ground, like having it go into the ground here on the rocks. And I'm going to take her hand and do the easy thing. I mean, you can think of something better than this, but just have it lifting up like that.
also thinking that maybe when you're done with this, I feel like she needs some green, either in the hair or the elements.
Yeah, I was going to change the background to more of a red rock and then change her to match the forest a bit.
She needs something alive on her.
Like I wouldn't do this part, but this is just a brush. So I'm just gonna quickly do a bit of brush stuff, pollen, you know. And
There you go.
to show that she's already changing something, I'm gonna take her hair, and this is like kind of not something you'd automatically think of necessarily, but I'm gonna take her hair and start to turn it into like a tree. Just working within what you already have.
Same thing you said in the last crit. When you introduce elements like trees and vines, it's compositional gold because you can do anything you want with them. They can bend and grow in any direction.
Yeah, like I can automatically, just using the fact that she is this kind of creature introducing life, you know, like something like that, you know, like we thought of maybe some possible narrative, you know, and now that I've done that, I can take it and start to use it. This isn't something you have to do, I'm not saying that. This is just my idea of what it could be.
Some leaves.
Yeah, there's gonna be some leaves on it and all that stuff. So, basically just trying to come up with something that you can do to make it more about what's happening. You know, hopefully you can take these and bring it in your own direction or whatever to satisfy your concept. So bring in some leaves. Leaves don't look like that, but for the sake of the paintover, they do. So, like what Dan was saying, I'm gonna change her to match more of a forest. I'm gonna take a pale green, which looks a lot like your background, and I'm going to start to do that to her skin so that she looks more like part of the earth.
Yeah. Organic.
Just because before she had like human skin tones, and that doesn't make her feel like a foreign creature.
Yeah.
Like she still has human features right now, and that's enough. You don't need to go further than that, you know, to show that she has some connection to us and the earth, and she's creepy, but not in an inaccessible kind of way.
Mars is saying, isn't this changing the concept though? Because I thought you said she was supposed to be a creepy demon that you would be wary to approach. Well, we never said that. We said that the name
Well,
was...
she was.
Yeah, but it's not. The painting she did was of a sexy girl with 6 eyes kneeling on a ledge with trees growing out of her head.
Yeah.
Like, even if the concept was that she's supposed to be a creepy demon girl, she wasn't a creepy demon girl. She was a sexy chick covered in roots, kneeling. So we're playing to the strengths of the painting and deterring from the concept because there was something cool here that was unintentional. It might not, might not be the demon angle that she wanted to go with, but in terms of the painting we were given for critique, there were elements in it that were good, that we're trying to amplify. We would have had to change literally everything to make her a creepy demon.
Yeah, I'm just trying to work with what you gave me.
Because I know this probably isn't a client piece, this is a portfolio piece, so playing to the strengths of it for this critique is a better idea than starting over from scratch, you know what I mean? Because you've got something good here that you can push. It works on a few levels. If it had to be creepy demon, you'd have to start over, but it doesn't have to be because it's a personal piece.
And if you don't, if you don't want to go this direction, these are all just ideas you can, just take in stride with whatever concept you end up going with. Like, as always, it's not our intention to just totally stray from the idea. We're just trying to help you make it work.
Yeah, we're trying to play to the image's strengths.
The last one obviously was more of a concept piece than anything, and it wanted to be an illustration because
like
there wasn't anything going on.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, there's two kinds of crits, where you look at the image and you play to the strengths of what's going on, or when you realize that the image is fundamentally flawed and you start over from the ground up. So now you've seen one of each. Do you guys find that you do this with your own work as well? Like, do you start with a concept, get near completion, and it doesn't work, and change the concept in a very new direction? I mean, it happens sometimes to everybody. I mean, I constantly have Dave crit my work, and Dave constantly has me crit his work. I mean, usually we find all the big flaws before we get to the end of the painting, but there are times when, you think something looks good, and then someone comes along and shows you something that you never caught that has to be changed, It happens to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's really excluded from that. It gets easier when you're conscious of it. I would say that I'm about 100% more conscious of it than I ever was doing these. Like, I think about this stuff all the time now because I'm always doing like this kind of stuff with Dan on his live stream. So, I'm not going to go too much further with this, because, you get the idea of where I was taking it. But, so yeah, we're just pushing the narrative elements, trying to bring something into the character that was already there, but amplify it, and add a little bit to it regarding what she's doing in this place. Like, something is happening here. She's there for a reason now. Like, it's not just a desolate place. It's that she is the life there, and she's going to make it alive.
Yeah.
You don't have to go in that direction. You could have gone the other way. My other idea was that she was withering away into dust. She'd be rooted into the rocks, like looking for water in the ground, like dying to live, and then have her sort of withering and her eyes half shut, stuff like that. I took it in the other way. But whatever way you want to go in, just take it in one narrative direction as to why she's in this desolate place.
Just keep in mind, if you do this version of it and you go with this paint over that we just did, it's that this whole piece now boils down to one thing, and that's contrast. It's alive versus dead. The foreground's alive, the background's dead. It's warm versus cool. It's like, lush versus desolate. It's, the very jagged rocks versus the curves of the roots and the feminine figure. Like, everything about this between the foreground and the background is contrasted and flipped. So you gotta play to that constantly and keep it in mind.
So I'm gonna turn the layers on and off. This is before, and this is after. So,
Aaron, to answer your question,
character.
It does help to work with multiple images, but not too many, because you don't want to have too many things going on at once.
So, hopefully that helps. Introduce some new ideas, and hopefully didn't change it too much where you'd still want to use it. Yeah, it was going to be her hand blowing out the seeds, but I didn't go in and finish it. Alright, so now I'm going to take one from the chat. So somebody feel free, drop an image that you want critiqued. Yeah. And okay, Brent Hollowell.
Alright, stop, guys.
Yeah, I got Brent's image up right now. Wow, this is pretty self-explanatory.
Many people. Posting their pictures.
Alright,
Yeah.
so I got Brent's image up right now. So this is just some creepy vampire thing. Sort of along the same lines of like, I always try and do like creepy stuff too. I always do these portraits. So I'm used to it. It's good. I'll be able to do a lot with this. It's cool. One thing immediately is that it's like we're catching him like at a point where he's just not interested in us. Like he's not looking over at us. I mean, like, I don't know if it was intended to be that, but it doesn't look like that.
It's like
his eye isn't necessarily looking at us. I don't know if you meant it to look at us, but it doesn't look like that.
the thing I instantly thought of when you opened it up was that because the light's warm and the background's cool, what this reads to me as is that we've either turned on a flashlight or opened a door, and this thing is, you know, it's like reacting to that.
Yeah.
It's not reacting to it in the piece because the face, you know, the eye looks very lazy and kind of tired because the brow is so, you know, slouched down, and the thing's not turning to look at the light source at all. But automatically this read to me as like, you know, you open the cellar door and this thing's like, bah, and I hate light, spooky. It's like, you know, we need like Will Smith in the foreground and his dog.
No, but
you know, that's what it is to me though. It's like that classic horror movie. They open the door and all the vampires turn around and go, nah. But, yeah.
but yeah, like what Dan's saying, it should be turning more to look at us. It should be turning to look at us and like not totally in light. Right here, this is a main problem over here. You have this area of contrast and you don't need it. You just don't need that to pop that hard. You can recede that into the background and it'll serve the creepiness a lot better. So I'm gonna do that. Do that right now and start to sort of focus the light source a bit. This thing receding into darkness works quite a bit. Like, for what it is, you know, you should do that. Another thing that I'll be doing right now is in the skin here, you know, you have tons and tons of little details.
Yeah.
And I know what you're going for, but it doesn't necessarily show off what you're looking to show off. What it shows off is a lot of problems with fundamental knowledge of like the skill.
Yeah, there's more emphasis on little tiny details than there is on the planes of the face. The planes of the face, I mean, they're kind of there, but they're not really emphasized. You're kind of losing them for this like melted clay, bloated spaghetti thing, and it's like the more that you lose, you know, like details are exactly that. They're details. They're accents to the fundamental forms underneath them. And if those fundamental forms don't read or they get lost and they become slaves to the details, it's time to rein them in because you don't want that to control the image. You want a clearly defined skull.
Mm-hmm. Like I have a skull right here that I'm looking at. I wish I had a webcam. I'd pull it up. But if you don't have a skull, you should get one. If you're gonna do this kind of stuff, make sure that you understand how everything reads. If it's bloated, then make it look bloated. If it's not supposed to be bloated, then don't. This is like an in-between kind of thing. So you either go in one direction or the other. You know, it should always be one extreme in a monster. Like something scary, like either stretched across a thin thing, or bloated, or wrinkly, but wrinkly in the right places.
Yeah. Carl Springer, to answer your question, we get a lot of questions like this, and I mean, when you think about it, I'm not trying to be a dick, but when you think about it, the answer is really common sense, so you don't really need to ask us that. It's like you're asking, does lighting have a limitation? For example, if you get a reference for lighting, can you choose to ignore the high contrast or boost it in certain places? You're creating an image when you make an illustration. You can change anything you want to satisfy the piece, and you already know that.
Yeah, I mean, like, you can do anything you want. I mean, like we were saying earlier in the live stream, is that you can literally, like, when you have total control over this. So, like, if I go in right now, like I am, I can change the values in certain places, like I am, to move my eye where I want you to, which is his eye. So, like, what I'm doing right now is I'm going in and I'm losing stuff everywhere because I don't want you to look there. I don't want you to look around this image because that's not the point. You're not supposed to see everything. And what it is right now is everything's defined. So right now you're looking everywhere. And this is a horror image, and I talk about this a lot when I talk about this kind of stuff, is that, when you're doing a horror image, it's horrifying and it should emphasize how horrible it is. So it's like, with a monster, what do you see? I've said this a bunch of times, what do you see when you see it? Like, what jumps out to you?
Like, is it about the teeth or is it about the eye?
Yeah.
So right now it's like this piece can only be two things. It's either about the fangs or it's about his eye. I would lean towards saying it's going to be about his eye, and that you should change the muscles around the eye to make him look more angry, more intense, more ferocious, and have him rolling the eye over to look at us where the light's coming from. Like, that's what I think it should be. But I mean, you could make it about the teeth. I just want you to understand that, like, there's only two things this piece could have for a focal point.
Yeah, the reason for that is, like I've said this before, imagine you turn a corner and you see it. What do you see first? Do you see the eye, or do you see the teeth? Because one of them is going to be the focus, and you got to choose, because they can't both be the focus. It'll look scarier that way because that's how you would actually see it. You'd see it because, you instantly look for a second and then you look away, so you never focus on it. Your eyes never lay on it, and you're never just, like, looking at it.
It's like the classic, I've talked about this on here before, but it's like the classic horror movie scene.
Hold on, Dan. Just wait a second. I don't want to just totally lose what you're saying.
Wow, dude. Dan sticker dub.
The Skype.
Dan sticker dub.
Right. Sorry, guys. Hold on one second. I gotta ban people. I'm gonna log in.
Can I talk, or is Skype being weird still?
You can talk now.
So it's like, I've talked about this on here before, but like the classic horror movie scene from those old movies like that is like, someone opens the door or the basement thing just a little bit, and then they peek in and they're like, oh, there's nothing down there. Or adversely, they get scared because that little thin beam of light will fall across the creature's eye and it'll be like, damn, and like, it'll catch the eye. Like, you'll see the other parts of the thing's face, but they'll be super shadowed out, and it'll just, the beam of light will go right across the highlight of the scariest part of the face. And that's how they forced you to be scared by it. So it's like, even if you don't use a little sliver of light, like somebody's opening a cellar door or whatever, you still got to keep in mind that, like, that emphasis of where you put the light is what makes it scary.
Yeah, like, I just put in some receding light. I mean, like, I would go as far as to actually change the face a bit to looking at us.
Yeah.
Like, if this were mine, like, I'm gonna go in and without, I mean, I'm not gonna continue to do this part, but I'm just gonna suggest to you that this is something you could do as a solution. Like, turn the head like this.
Like, I don't know if it was your intention, but it reminds me a lot, like, I know it's a vampire and I know what you're doing, but the way you've laid out the ear, the way you've done the fangs, the way you've shrunken the skin, the way you've made the eyes, the way you've built up the detail, it all looks really, really derivative of that scene in Bram Stoker's Dracula where Gary Oldman becomes the bat in the closet. Like, it looks like that, like way too much like that. Like you played down the nose, so it wasn't a bat nose, but almost everything else is there.
Yeah, so basically adjust the lighting, lose the detail where you don't need it, so everywhere that's away from the focal you can lose it. I mean, I know your work, Brent, and I've seen it before. You know, like we've done paint overs before of it. It's still the same issue where you keep too much detail just around areas that you don't need it. So like, it's just as effective without any of that stuff. I mean, it's more effective without it. I mean, I do portraits like fuck all the time, and it's like it's just something you gotta do. It's like you gotta get rid of things. You only have so much of a space to look in that you just need to choose where you put the focus in the face, and it's usually the eyes. Even on a normal person, it's the eyes. On a monster, even more so. Unless they have some major feature, unless they have something on them. Something's happening, you know, like something scary, like they have something in their mouth or whatever.
It has a plastic human skull, not a real one.
Yeah, real one's expensive. It's a cast of one. So
Well,
yeah.
people saying like strands of hair are always scary, but it's like that's another element you have to add if you do this, because right now it has no hair. Do you want to go for the creepy, kind of moist skin, gross looking amphibian vampire, or do you want to go for the, you know, reanimated corpse? It's got hair hanging off of it, kind of thing. It's like if this has no hair and you add that, you have to balance that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's an added element. I'd say it doesn't need it at all. It's creepy
Yeah.
enough with the texture you got.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would just play with what you have, you know, like, what you have is good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with your idea, it's just where you choose to push it. It's fine, like, I'm just gonna go in and add in what Dan was saying.
What?
The, speckly grossness.
Oh, yeah. He's got a little layer of film on him like a frog, and he looks kind of slimy in certain places where the light's catching. You know, that's creepy.
Yeah, so I'm just moving the focus around to the, just the eye. Yeah, get rid of that bit. But just to push it even more, soft light layer, you know, just to show you, soft light layer, pumping this back, it's gonna help you a ton.
Pro tip: cover your vampires in Vaseline.
Vaseline powders.
Vaseline. Hey, we hit 250.
Hey everybody.
I wonder if Dave and Dan Lavusi are gonna argue on Wednesday. He details everything in his paintings. Can't wait. We're not gonna argue with Dan Lavusi. That'd be stupid. We're gonna ask him questions about how he got so beautiful.
I mean, this isn't the first time I'll be talking to Dan Lavusi.
Putting
I say his
detail,
name wrong though.
yeah, like putting detail everywhere in his pieces works because he's got such a strong fundamental skeleton on it. You know, like
Yeah, and the other thing about that is it's his market.
yeah,
I mean, like, his market is that. It's exactly that. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing for what he's doing. Like, obviously, with anybody, there's always room for improvement.
Right.
And that's, he's not excluded from that. Neither am I.
Yeah.
But
It's the big
it
thing.
works for what he's doing and what he's pitching and all his ideas.
There's only 2 reasons we ever discourage detail. And the biggest reason we usually do is because, detail everywhere. The biggest reason we do is because a lot of people start putting the details in too soon before they've worked out the fundamental planes and everything on an image in the forms. So it's like they get caught up in the detail and it makes the image suck as a result because they haven't done the hard stuff yet. And it's like an illusion of a good illustration when you just busy something up with detail without doing that form analysis. But it's like, when you get good and you have that stuff down and you reach a level in your work, if you want to make it super detailed, there's no reason you can't.
Yeah.
That's style.
Like, I just did that last night with a client piece, and I showed Dan.
Yeah.
And it was like I over-detailed the crap out of it. But that's what the job was.
Yeah.
The job required that I go crazy and not just do, implying stuff
I
all the
sound
time.
like T-Pain. Yeah, Skype sucks today, guys. Sorry if I sound like a robot.
Yeah, we apologize for
Nothing I can do.
shittiness.
Hey, some spit.
It's just creepy things.
Dan Luisi's coming on Wednesday of this week at 5 p.m. EST. Just so you know. Saw people asking. On this stream. On Dave's stream.
Alright, so I'm not gonna go much further than this with this. But yeah, just darkened it, lost a lot of your details, put the focus right around the eye, in the teeth, focused more on the eye though, lost that background light a bit, and then desaturated a bit and made some more, realistic tones. So here's what it is now, before, after.
Yeah, Garruk, he is
Before.
using an Intro 4.
And after. So I'm gonna save this for you. All of these are gonna be up on the blog, by the way.
What Dave just did when you look at the before and after is exactly what we just said. It's just like more form, less detail. It's the exact same thing we were just talking about. It's boosting the values of the forms, making it read as a skull, like a gaunt, fleshed thing, and losing the detail, because the detail was actually flattening the forms, and that happens a lot.
Yeah. And because it's a horror image, moving the focus more on the horror aspect of it and less on this is a room that's lit and there has to be another light in there because this is a form and it needs to read, it needs to read from the back, so drop a light back there. While the light back there does help with the forms, it doesn't help with your mood. This helps with the mood. Losing that light helps with the mood. Making it just some scary, dark place is better than going crazy and just using effects to bump it forward and stuff.
Do the before and after again, some people missed it.
Oh, it's cool, Brent. I know that you're trying, so you always keep pushing yourself with your work. There's definite changes in it. I saw your softer brushstrokes and stuff, and you're losing focus in areas, so you're definitely doing it. It's just a matter of continuing down the line. So this is the afters, before and after. So I haven't been on here too long. I can take another one. This will be the last one. Is that it? Wow, that was
Greg.
ridiculously quick.
Yeah.
Greg, that was like
Stop.
a draw.
Stop.
Yeah, we got Greg's. So, Greg, cool image. I'm assuming you used a model for this. It feels a bit too reft. It's good. I'm not saying it's not good. It's a good image.
Yeah.
You know, you have a lot of good values in it and stuff like that.
It's just a weird kind of stiffness that usually comes from a photo crutch.
Mm.
Whereas
Yeah, I mean, she feels like a friend and not like an elf.
Yeah.
You know,
Like it's well done. It's just in terms of being an illustration, it feels very stiff. The same way that some of those like high fantasy painters, you know, you see images and you're like, oh, they took a friend of their, you know, took a photo of their friend in a robe, and that's the wizard, and it just looks like it's posed kind of.
Yeah, and I'm gonna move around in the image and tell you some stuff. So, the reason that's a problem, and the reason you know that immediately when you look at it, and I'm just gonna tell you this is, you know, something that I always see, is because, like, there is such a huge difference between this area and this area, where with the face, with the elf and everything that you have going on, that's good. You know, I'm like, it looks good, it looks referenced, and she doesn't feel like she lives there or anything. But on top of that, I can tell that you don't do that naturally with like your own stuff, because in the background you have these, you know, these woods, and it looks unfinished. It doesn't look natural, where she does look natural.
Yeah.
So it looks like you refed one thing and then you bullshitted the other one, and it just doesn't help you.
Yeah.
You really gotta, you know, be able to match both of these things, or one of them's gonna stand out like a sore thumb. Like the trees really stand out. Like you have these like mossy bits on it, and it's like repeated, but they're all at the same level, receding back.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make any sense.
And I just want to stress, like, what Dave's saying with the trees isn't limited to the background. In the foreground, you've got the girl, and, like, I can tell you posed the girl, probably photographed it like we talked about, but you didn't look at real armor. You're doing something that a lot of people do that I see a lot. I even see it in, like, you know, a lot of professional work where they have a photo of a figure and they use it to base the illustration on, and then they just make up the armor. They didn't really look at it because it's not reflecting light the way that metal does, and the carvings don't read as carvings in metal. It reads as, like, you know, a plastic set of armor you give a kid. It doesn't read as something carved out of silver.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is adjusting the trees, making them less focused and match the lighting on the girl. I'm gonna be on it for a little bit. Not too much. This is the last critique. So, like, I've gone out and I just lost the trees, and instantly that's better because I'm moving the focus to the front. Like, you know, just check it out with the misty background. It matches the sort of dull colors you have going on. You know, like you have this sort of fogged out look with your values. I don't know if that's intentional. I'm playing off of that just so that I don't change everything as far as the lighting goes. But with that being said, I've adjusted for that and just started like adding bits. You know, like make the background feel a bit more like woods. You know, like you ever been in the woods, it isn't just like grass and then a couple trees. You know, like there isn't really any grass. It's just like leaves and stuff. Like that's just other things about it that looks weird to me. Like you actually have grass in the woods. Like that.
Like I wanna show you immediately what this image is to me. And I don't mean this offensively, I thought of a painting instantly. And it's a very flawed painting, and I want to show you why, because these are the same kinds of things that we're talking about. Here it is. I found a good high-res image of it. Look at the armor that this guy's wearing and look at the pose and understand that even though this is well rendered and even though it's a professional piece, he's making the same mistakes that you're making.
Can I see it, Dan?
Yeah, it's right here, and I'll send it to you. Look at the guy in the foreground. This painting, I always use this as an example for this photo stiffness. You can tell he's trying to be Donato Giancola, and he's setting up his friends in poses, and because he's doing that, all these horrible things happen. Like, the guy's arms with the sword look terrible. His body doesn't read in perspective. His face is squished. The elf dude can't pull off the expression because he probably couldn't do it in real life. All these elements in the piece are broken because he's using such a photo crutch. And then his armor has the same thing yours has, where it's like it doesn't look like metal.
Yeah, I mean, like, everything's kind of squished. I mean, it's one of the things where you don't have everything nailed. I mean, like, with the armor, it's like he hasn't studied armor. It's like he's studied Donato. Like, all of the armor has speculars where it shouldn't have speculars. You know, it looks like it's made of glass, like it's see-through.
Like, the arms of the guy, though, holding the sword destroy the entire painting. Like, there's other flaws, but look how insanely broken and stiff and lifeless it is.
Yeah, that's the problem with models. I mean, like, when we do the live streams and we do the study streams and stuff, with a focus on fundamentals, that's what we're talking about, is you gotta understand why stuff doesn't work.
Isn't that a style?
By doing it.
No, that's not a style. That's a fundamental flaw. The style he's trying to do is romantic realism. He's trying to be a Renaissance artist doing fantasy art, and he's failing because he has such a huge crutch on photos.
Yeah, all the old masters, they would, you know, like the old masters that they're trying to be when they do stuff like that, you know, like these guys trained for years and years and years under apprenticeships to learn all of that stuff. And they didn't just like come out of the gate and were like, hey, let's take some photos. You know, like they did some serious studies. They understood what they were doing before they fell on anything like that.
Yeah.
So I've gone in on this image and I bumped up the contrast a bit using a soft light layer. And another thing I'm going to do real quick is start to adjust for this. So I'm going to go into Google and type in plate armor. So here's something. So look at that. Plate armor. See how armor reflects?
Yeah, see, it's the same thing I was just saying. It's like your armor looks plastic. So did the stuff in the painting I just showed, because it's not reflecting light with the intensity that metal reflects light.
Yeah. Like, you can do that level, you know, with the highlights and the reflectiveness and all that stuff, but you gotta, you know, bring in also a worn sort of look. You know, like, do that with the lighting and do that with the metal, but also, you know, add some grime to it and things like that. So I'm going to copy the image.
Isn't the leg on the ground a bit short?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. We'll get there.
It's not because of the ref. The ref was right. When they laid armor on it, it became wrong. I'll explain that in a second. So just using this ref, I can come in and, I mean, I know where the light's coming from. I can instantly go in and fix it, right? I'm also going to change the armor itself because it doesn't really work. Always want to use real armor for reference.
Yeah.
Real armor and then tailor it to your fantasy world.
Yeah. It's always better to start with like a, you know, for something as specific as armor that's form-fitting, you know, it's a really good idea to base it off something real, because I guarantee you there's armor that exists in the real world that's cooler than anything you could make up that you don't even know about. There's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, like, just changing it to give her some regular plate armor, and I'll introduce some of your elements back into it. But, you know, keep in mind what real armor looks like.
And then you got to keep in mind, like, what is she wearing? Is she supposed to be some girl who's half stripped with a full set of plate mail? Is she supposed to be some kind of ranger looking thing who's lean and shouldn't be wearing that much metal because it's heavy? Like you gotta think about armor in a design sense. It's like, either she just got out of some kind of war zone or something and she's taking her armor off, or she didn't have plate mail to begin with, and the metal's just there as an accent. Oh, that's a quiver in the foreground, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is that you have a quiver in the foreground, and
it read
if she's a ranger or something like that, she's supposed to be light on her feet.
Yeah, full plate mail doesn't work with that. But it's like even the quiver in the foreground read as one of the greaves on her legs that she'd taken off or something.
Yeah, so I'm gonna change the leg to come out a bit. Like that.
Question, speaking of armor, Dan, what do you think about the design of the armor in World of Warcraft? They look really uncomfortable and rigid. World of Warcraft is designed for 13-year-olds. It's all about big negative shapes and angles and tribal designs. I mean, it's good design for what it is. It's supposed to give little kids boners, essentially, and that's what it does. So it is what it is. It's a proven method. Kids love the look of it. In terms of practicality, there's no question. There's no way any of that shit could exist in real life, so...
Yeah, I mean, it's not supposed to be practical. That's not what they were going for. It works for what they're going for.
Yeah, it works for WoW. It doesn't work for anything else.
Yeah, you can't, legitimize WoW armor. There's no point.
You couldn't shoot a movie like Braveheart about WoW and have everybody wearing that shit. It would look fucking ridiculous. It would look so stupid. Bad Blood, I already answered that question. We try to only do illustrations on here because there's more information to break down. We can teach you more about your flaws and stuff if we see a full illustration, because you're not avoiding anything like background. If you want to crit on a character design, you have to come on my stream. I have no problem looking at character designs, but for this, where we're giving you a long form in-depth critique, we want to stick to images where you really push everything.
Yep.
Question, what do you think of the Bamboo line of Wacom tablets? They're an economy version of the Intuos. If you can afford an Intuos, get it. The Bamboo doesn't stand a chance against it.
Yeah, it's not as good, the pressure's not as good, all that stuff.
It's a tablet for people that can't afford an Intuos.
Yeah. I'm gonna go back into the image now. I've changed the armor to feel a little bit more like armor. And I've adjusted her leg in the foreground a bit. So, I mean, you should do more with it. The thing about this is that there's not a whole lot I can do because of this leg going straight up. I mean, it feels forced just in the image itself. She's posing or something. It doesn't feel right. She's not sleeping and she doesn't look at peace, really. There's no emotion going on.
Yeah, it's you have to include a narrative, either what's about to happen or what just happened. Did she just come from a battle and that's why she's taking some of her armor off? Is she relaxing after exerting herself? Is she contemplative? Is she meditating? Is something about to happen? Because right now it just reads as, maybe I'll take a nap. Just sit down, my armor. Our answer to what do you think about painting on an iPad is the same answer we have with what do you think about painting on a Cintiq, what do you think about painting on a Mac, what do you think about painting on a PC, what do you think about Corel, what do you think about Photoshop. If it works for you, it works for you. If you can paint on an iPad and you're comfortable and you get good results, then great. Do it.
So I'm just adjusting her expression to match something a bit, just more like, I don't know, like what's going on. Like she could be looking at her, like my idea was that she's looking at her like weapon or something with like some disdain. I don't know, something going on. Or
Tetro, we never said bamboos were bad. We said they weren't as good as Intuos Force, and that's an absolute fact. So we never said it was bad.
it's not bad, it's just not as good.
Yeah, that's all we said. Question, I see you can draw pretty fast. How can I evolve my speed? Are there specific exercises? It's a combination of studying a lot, doing a lot of images from your head, and just doing it for a long period of time. The more you're working on the more things, the faster you'll get naturally. There's no short.
I mean, it's just studies. That's all it is. It's like the only reason I can draw fast at all is because of studies.
Because it's not about being fast; it's about being accurate. You know, so that's the thing. Is like anybody can draw fast, but unless you know what you're doing, it's gonna look like shit. So it's about taking the time to study a lot and get accuracy down. And the more you understand forms and things like that, the faster you can draw them from the top of your head accurately.
I'm gonna push more elvish features because right now she just feels like a white girl with elf ears.
Yeah, again, not to be a dick, Dave Ka, you're asking a question you already know the answer to. So, what's a good way to study values? Set something up with good value and replicate, or look at something that has good value and replicate.
Yeah, I mean, all studies are is just, you know, you learning to do the study. Like, you do a study of a thing, that's how you learn it. It's like anything else. It's like, how do you get better at baseball? You play baseball. You practice all the time. Like, you do exactly what you're trying to get better at right now. Use online resources, you know, go on websites, go on forums, ask people, talk to them, show them your work, stuff like that.
How do you determine what is good values? Well, a good value range is something where, you know, light and dark are both in it, but they're not muted and they're not blown out. It's a mid-ground between the image isn't washed out and it isn't completely blown out. It's not posterized where it's black versus white everywhere, and it's not just medium gray everywhere. You have to find an image with a full range of value. I mean, like, you know this stuff. I know you do. You know the difference between something with good value and bad value.
Yeah, it's just like if you grab a reference photo online and it's shitty, you know, like if it's all blown out and edited to death, then that's not as good as one that's, you know, has natural light. You know, like if you're doing it for the purpose of that, then that's fine. That's something totally different. But otherwise, no. This outfit right here, it's very forced. Between her boobs, like I didn't even see that for some reason until right now. It's like forced hotness or something, like, and it's not at all. So I mean, like one or the other. Like either no cleavage at all and an undershirt, or total cleavage. One or the other though. Because right now it's like, she's like, I'm kind of a trashy warrior, I'm not sure though.
Question, would you be willing to evaluate and critique a cartoon style of drawing? Yes, we would, but there's a difference between different kinds of cartoon styles of drawing. If you give us a sketch with no real knowledge in it and it's just kind of bullshit, like, you know, I don't mean to be mean when I say that, but it's like, some people use cartoony as a crutch because they don't want to do hard work, and some people use cartoony as an informed style. If it's Bobby Chew cartoony, then yeah, we'd love to look at it. If it's Rurouni Kenshin cartoony, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing of you gotta know that a style is a style that's informed by reality. You know, like, a lot of the critiques for styles is to go back and learn how to actually make a style, how to stylize something. How do you stylize something? It's from understanding what you're trying to stylize. So like human form, for instance. You know, like how do you exaggerate it to make it work for you?
Yeah.
So what I've done now is I've taken her kind of like cocky look on her face, like I'm the best sort of thing she's got going on right now, like the little smirk and stuff, and turned it into more of like a thinking about what she did sort of thing. Because the mood kind of reflects that. Like her weapons are on the ground.
Gray,
She's
dark,
just like
dark.
sitting against something that looks like a grave a little bit to
She's
me.
in a swamp, no real sunlight.
Yeah, because to me it looks like she's at some sort of altar, or like why would she be sitting in front of it or whatever else,
Like a crypt.
Yeah, like I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it feels like that. So I'm gonna go in and I wanted to add blood. Somebody just said it in the chat. It feels like it should be there.
Greg wanted to make it a peaceful mood. That's what he said he was having trouble with. Yeah, the mood in the background and the colors you've used read as kind of unnerving, kind of like tense and kind of sad. It doesn't read as peaceful. It reads as like an overcast day in a bog, and there's some kind of looming thing. Like those were the colors in the piece.
Well, just to further push it, I'll go back and do a quick run over for that sort of thing. I've taken her look and just like you got these twigs in the background, sort of dead. The desaturated colors back there. I mean, that's why it looks that way.
This is a weird question. I've been trying to draw more realistically, to make the transition from cartooning to realistic. What airbrushing techniques would you recommend? I wouldn't recommend airbrushing at all.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with brushes at all,
No,
whatsoever.
You can learn how to draw more realistically by just grabbing a pencil and drawing realistically. Drawing from life, drawing from anatomy books, learning fundamentals. Like it's not about airbrushing at all. That's totally off topic.
Yeah. So here, I'm gonna take this. So what I did with it is I brought it more to a place of sort of doom and gloom kind of thing. The reason it looks like that though is because she's sort of like she's laid up against this like tomb looking thing. It's got like this thing over here that looks like some sort of like creepy 6-armed scorpion man. It looks like a shrine, and then like your colors in general were very muted, so it felt dead in the area, like Dan said, like she was in a swamp. She looked, either like a bad guy or I don't know, like the way her facial expression is, it's not peaceful. It's kind of cocky. It's the eyebrows and the way she's closing her eyes and that little smirk she has.
And even though you've got some warms in the forest in your original painting, they're still very muted. They're not warm enough. Like, think about the swamp scene in like the Neverending Story, and why does that feel sad and unnerving? It's because it's so grayed out and so blued out. That's what those colors do. And then think about like any Miyazaki movie where there's a forest and it's like all the colors are super warm, super saturated, there's sunlight coming in, there's all kinds of things going on, like there's life in the forest. It looks beautiful, you want to run around in it. And it's like those are the two extremes of what you can do with color in that kind of environment. And right now you're kind of in the middle, leaning towards the former. It's just really washed out and really gray. It doesn't look like the sun's out. It looks kind of misty and boggy. But yeah.
So I mean, like, that's one of the problems about having a reference. If the girl you've photographed wasn't necessarily the best reference, like she might have been making a face, or she might have a face that just automatically reads like that without her even trying. So I mean, like, just a quick thing I've adjusted for right here. It's just taking a reference and just changing it slightly. Like just little adjustments here and there, and you can alter a face's expression just completely. And those things are they're so important.
I'll show you my favorite guy for this, okay? I'm going to post a link in the chat to this.
I'm also going to bring her tattoo around to the rest of her.
I'll send it to you too, dude. It's this guy, Kiyomu. He does beautiful environments, but they're very, very, like, kind of Miyazaki background kind of things. But, like, look at the colors in that forest versus the colors in your forest. And again, there's a break in the forest with a monument. It's the same kind of setup you have. but look how much brighter and warmer and more peaceful and effective that is. It's the same setup you have, a forest with a rock in the middle of it that some people are at. But look at the colors.
Yeah. Yep, that's the thing of it, is that you're pushing a mood, and in this it feels like a grayed out day. Like, I didn't know at all that that's what you were going for. I mean, I can adjust for that. I'll do that real quick. But it's gonna take a bit. You know, like, you'd have to push a lot to make it that. I honestly feel like it would take less work to do what I was doing, just from what you already had set up. But I mean, like, if I come in and I add, like, more golden light, and I come in and add, like, patches of golden light around.
God, I love Kiyomu. His colors fucking rock me. He's so good.
And then go back in with the blue.
Dan, you're like Google image search in human form. It's just because I can't forget anything. If I see things, it sticks. So if I see any similarity in anything I give a crit on, automatically my brain's like, you've seen it before, it's right there, go get it. That's just how it is. It's a curse.
Yeah, Dan is cursed.
Can I write his name in the chat? I linked his DeviantArt, man. You have it. Yeah, someone just put it in. It's Kiyomu. If you search it on Google, his DeviantArt's the first result.
One thing you can do with this kind of mood is, you know, make things sort of falling. That's a thing you see all the time in movies. It feels peaceful. It feels inviting. You know, just the leaves falling from the trees, stuff like that.
Tranquility.
Yeah. Things like that emphasize those kind of moods.
So here's one thing you got to keep in mind. It has to do with the Kiyomu rep I just sent you, and it has to do with what Dave's doing in the background with the light. There's a cast shadow from her body against that rock, and she's not in bright light. She's in a dark patch of forest right now. She's just in shadow, but she has a cast shadow against the rock. So it's like right off the bat, it's like that's an opportunity to bring some super saturated light to the foreground, to make that metal reflect it, to do the exact same thing with the environment I linked, where there's a monolith in a break in the forest, and that's, you know, if there's a break in the forest where there's no trees, the sunlight has to come in because nothing's blocking it. You know, you got to think about parts of the environment that aren't necessarily in the image. She's in a clearing, so it has to have sunlight.
Yeah, and if it's sunlight, then you need to push your values. You're going, like, you're doing the same thing, the Donato thing, where you do these dulled out values. And I'm not ripping on Donato, he's great, but
No,
I'm
Donato's
saying that
yeah.
that's something he does all the time. You don't have to beat Donato.
Yeah. Dan, do you have any set time for your stream or usual times you do it? It's not a set time, but it's usually somewhere around noon EST. It's like 12 o'clock PM EST, or a little earlier. And then it goes for roughly 12 hours. It goes from like noon to midnight in Eastern Standard Time every day but Sunday. Sunday is my errand day where I make up for lost time during the week, where I, you know, clean the house and take out the trash. But every day of the week, I'll be there tomorrow, all through the week doing that, so.
I'm actually erase out that light a bit. It's a little intense.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
What?
We have 275 viewers, and in the past 1 minute, Kiyomu got 20 more followers. Crazy. Yeah, the reason I don't post in the Crimson Daggers Facebook about when I'm streaming is because I'm always streaming. I'm always on. Unless I'm asleep or at the supermarket, I'm on live stream.
Yeah, it's really, you'd have to try to miss Dan.
Question, do you guys still have time to make vids like the one where Dan turns a guy into a burger? No, or we would. Sorry.
Yeah, we apologize.
I know people want that, but I think a good time. Yeah, see what this does though? Bringing the light down into the foreground and making the armor reflect that warm light. Because now it looks like a peaceful summer morning. Like the sun's just coming up. Maybe she just woke up. You know, maybe she was sleeping there and she's just snapping out of the kind of slumber thing. You know, it's very light beams coming through the trees, and you know that classic, you know, it's the beginning of every Disney cartoon in a forest kind of thing. Butterflies in the background and whatever. Like now it's tranquil. Now it's like very, very peaceful. Just got up from rest, very tranquil, at ease kind of thing. Yeah, and just because we have so many more people in here now, again, just to repeat, Wednesday at 5 o'clock p.m. EST on this channel, Dave's live stream, we're going to have Dan Levisi on to talk about marketing, illustration, selling his IP, Last Man Standing, and just all kinds of general stuff. We'll be taking questions from the chat. We'll have our own stuff we're going to ask him. It's going to be a long conversation. It's going to be kind of like the Brad Rigney one, if you guys remember that. It's going to be here Wednesday, 5 o'clock p.m. EST. Dan Levisi.
Yep. So, I hope you can see what that does to your image. I just quickly took what you had, I changed our expression, I adjusted the colors and all that stuff to really push the mood a bit. There's other things you can do. You can add forest elements, you can add birds, you can add, you know, all sorts of stuff that's gonna push that she's not, you know, some killer in the middle of a swamp. So, like, here's before and after with the changes that you were intending. So, here's before, and here's after. So, before, after.
Yeah, big difference. Do you see how now that he's made the changes with the light, do you see how before it looked like a swamp, like a sad kind of bog? Now that you have contrast, do you see that?
And look at the face. So before and then after. Look at what just changing the eyebrows does. You don't want to make her, I mean, like, you can make her happier than I did. But the thing is that she looks, I mean, like, no offense if it's somebody you know, but she looks like a bitch. She just does. It's that facial expression of like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah, I'll take this fucking picture. Fuck you. Yeah, go fucking paint it.
Yep.
You and your wizards. But yeah, I mean, you can add, yeah, like what you said, some green stuff in the foreground.
Oh god.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could bring leaves here too.
We had this question like 60 times. I'm just going to answer it. What's your opinion of Paint Tool Psi? Neither of us use it. We can't give you an opinion.
Yeah, I don't know what he's talking about. Like here, some leaves, stuff growing on the actual altar will help you.
Yeah, exactly. That's
vines and stuff.
That's a good touch. Yeah, there should be moss and vines on the altar.
Feels more inviting.
Dave, what's that brush? Well, we found it in Tibet, in some ancient ruins. There was a carving on the wall that said, "He who need mighty magic, take this brush and do well." And we thought there'd be some booby traps with something so precious, so, you know, I took it. When I lifted the brush, I tried to replace it with a sack of sand so I could outdo the counterweight, so we didn't want to die.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily we got it out of there, because it is, you know, it's a very magical brush, obviously, you know. I don't think Dave would be able to do what he does without it, so I mean, it was definitely worth the quest.
Yeah, believe me, I tried to paint before I used it. I don't even know how. I was like, what's form, what's light, and then all of a sudden Dan gave it to me and I said, all that is and all that ever will be, and I held it up into the sky.
Yeah, I mean, like we came out of the tomb and, you know, we thought we were good to go, and then Belloc showed up, and he was like, "Once again, what was briefly yours is now mine, Doctor." And he took it, and then, you know, we had to go to Egypt to get the fucking brush back. It was just absolutely insane. There were Nazis involved. It's ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
we're trying to say it's not about the brush. Learn how to do fundamentals. There's no easy way out, and there's no shortcut home.
Yeah. And then Chelsea had the brush for a while, and fucking that guy came, and he was like, "How do you still have the brush, Fraulein?" We had to kill him and
Worst expression.
all of his friends. Turns out he had the custom brush burnt into his hand so they could replicate it. We had to kill them. It was ridiculous. Absolutely insane.
So, let's look at it again. I added life, I added other stuff. This is it before. And this is it after. Before, after. So add life, add light, add more contrast, more shiny stuff floating around, peaceful mood, less emphasis on the background, you know? And then, like we talked about before we changed this mood stuff, the armor needs to change, the leg under her needs to change, and her expression needs to change. So, that's gonna do it for today. That was the last crit. So, yeah. Let me somehow stop this from happening.
Thanks for coming.
Hold on, I'm gonna save it. So, yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. If you want to be a part of the live stream and you want to do all of the challenges with us, we have the Blood Sports Challenge going on right now. It's bi-weekly. This one's due, the one we're doing right now is due on Friday. So, it's the toy challenge for the boxes. Go to crimsondaggers.com, click on Blood Sports, and go check it out. And this Wednesday, 25th, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have Dan Levisi on to talk about his beautiful stuff that he does with his life.
Hey, are you going to stream now? No, this is my day off. I'll be doing a study stream later, but I'm not doing the 12-hour marathon. I will be doing it tomorrow through next Saturday, though, so I'll see you there.
So, here's the theme music. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming.
Great.
We appreciated it. This will be up on YouTube.
Thank you for letting us help us help you.
Yeah, we'll do this again. We'll do it again soon. You guys have a good day.
Go.
Have a good Sunday.
Oh.
Bye.